Welcome back to Soul Sparks. I'm Saima, and today we are stepping into the part of spirituality that's equal parts wonder and okay, wait, that actually happened. Because let's be real, spirituality is having a glow up right now. We are moving from collecting ideas to living the experience, from quoting teachers to becoming the transmission, from tell me what's true to show me what I can directly perceive. And that's exactly what my guest today is, Seph Dietlin. Seph is an internationally recognized multidimensional bridge, angel communicator, and quantum activation guide. He doesn't just teach concepts, he facilitates altered states, angelic dialogue, quantum field exploration, and contact journeys with angelic and intelligence's Lemurian. And his activations aren't just lectures, they are transmissions designed to dissolve limitation, rewire identity, and reconnect you to your original blueprint. So, if you have been feeling like spiritual growth needs less homework and more lived reality, this episode is your portal. So, Sarah, welcome to the show.
You for having me.
You're warmly welcome. It's my pleasure to have you here. So, Steph, like you're super clear that your work is rooted in experience and not theory. So, can you share that what's the biggest difference you see in people when they shift from learning spirituality to actually experiencing it directly?
Yes. Well, first of all, as you mentioned in the intro, this should be an experiential portal for the growth and integration as opposed to teaching like we do in formal school. And when that happens, we are successfully integrated with a higher aspect of ourselves. So, what does that look like, as you ask? That looks like a person living in an expansive, abundant, and highly creative state where they feel fully alive and fully in their purpose. And so you could call it an approach, but it's a lot more than that. It's a transmission. But when we go about it this way, we move from feeling stagnant, we move from feeling stuck as if we can't move forward, and we move into possibilities in present tense, not future tense.
That really you have explained that really clearly, I would say, and that's really powerful. And I really love how you clearly you drew that distinction when spirituality shifts from something we study to something we live. It sounds like the energy changes completely from contraction and feeling stuck into openness, like you said, creativity and possibility. And the way you describe it feels less about fixing oneself and more about unlocking a natural state of flow and expression. And you can almost, sense how experiential practice brings people back into a creative relationship with life itself. And that's really remarkable the way you explained. Now, what's one early sign someone's still in the concept phase and one sign they have crossed into embodied knowing?
Right. It's how you feel. That is the litmus through and through, is how you feel. Do you feel expanded and wonderful? And do you feel not just content, but bliss? Or do you feel still a bit of fear? Or do you still feel a bit like you're missing out on something or that you're searching for something that you haven't found yet? And that is what happens, of course, in the overthinking phase. And I love how you mentioned earlier that, the difference is unlocking a part of ourselves versus actually learning something and applying the knowledge. And that is truly the distinction here. And as a practitioner myself, you see the difference in facilitating this kind of transformation is in acknowledging that we're merely just a conduit. And so, for my role in all of this, along the way, all I've been doing is to calibrate the instrument or conduit that I am The true source of all of this comes from much, much higher realms. But the ability to be connected to the higher realms while facilitating and allowing yourself to be a broadcast beacon is where it's truly at. I do retreats, for example, that are calibration retreats, and I constantly get emails and phone calls from the people who have gone to these retreats with their jaw dropped and a sense of awe, saying that whatever they upgraded during these experiences was real, it was profound, and it has shifted their life. They're full of joy and they're creating success that they didn't think was possible or that felt held from them. And in that way, that's where the difference is. When I create experiences, I'm very clear that I'm co creating experiences and I'm co creating with a higher realm. That higher realm is the realm that's actually doing the work.
I really like that safe because concepts can be. I feel that concepts can be a safe little penthouse suite for the mind, but embodiment, that's where the nervous system and the soul finally shake hands. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, love that. Yes, the nervous system and the soul. I'm going to have to use that. Finally, shake hands. That is delightful. I love that. Thank you.
Yes. Now, you say that, you know, like your activations are transmissions, not teachings. Now, for the listeners who's like, cool word, but what does that mean in practice? Like, how would you explain a transmission without making it sound like Wi-Fi for angels?
Wi-Fi for angels. Well, actually, it kind of is, but that's okay. For anyone who's new to this and wants to step into it delicately, then I would love to choose some different words to invite us into it. And for that, I would simply just put us into an experience in our everyday. Let's
Mhm.
say we are not having the best day, or maybe something happened with our work or in a relationship that disappointed us. And lo and behold, it's a Saturday afternoon, and a friend of ours calls us at noon and says, I'm picking you up. We're going to lunch. And pretty soon, in the presence of this person's positive energy, and maybe they're in a light state, it creates laughter. Pretty soon, we get lifted out of that denser frequency and we feel like something's been lifted off of us. We get dropped off at home again. And when we do, we're like, wow, I feel better. And what was I worried about all along? And in fact, we could say, I feel reset. Well, the minute that we're reset, we're back to being connected with our higher self. And when we are connected to our higher self in any capacity, that is when we are unstoppable. You do not have to put a spiritual or conscious label on it. All you have to know is that when you feel extremely connected to the most positive aspect of your inner being, that's when the magic gets switched on. So when people come to these events, they're in a high frequency, very loving, very positive environment. And basically, this is where they get reset. And this is the secret of it all is that they're not actually getting reset by me. They're actually connecting with that aspect of themselves. Much like if our friend, knowing or not knowing that we were having a down time, decides to spontaneously pick us up and take us out of our woes and into a higher state. What happens then is that we are reset and we go back to a high functioning aspect of being present and fully blossoming in our everyday world. So that's a good way to actually explain it in a simple way. And that's the way that I think about it is that when we bring these aspects in, these transmissions, we're merely causing whatever it is that we're carrying on our shoulders to dissolve and then what's left beneath that's always there for each and every one of us is the most powerful part of ourselves. And once we're, like you say, shaking hands between the two, Then the next thing you know, we become unstoppable. This is where synchronicity happens. This is where miraculous meetings happens, or if you want to call them chance meetings or events that happen out of the blue. These happen when we're in that state. I share with people because of experiencing this myself. If ever we're feeling weighted down and we're looking for a solution to something, our first order of business is lifting the weight off. Because once we're in that flow state, that's when either the ideas, the clarity, or the actual synchronicity, or all of the above will carry us into the solution.
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate how you explain that, Seth, because it takes the mystery out of it while still honoring the depth, I feel. Framing a transmission as a return to connection with the higher self, like explained, makes it feel grounded and embodied and not conceptual. And the idea of being reset, like you said, and reconnecting with parts of ourselves we have, lost with is really so powerful. It sounds less like learning something new and more like remembering who we already are. And from that place, everything starts to move differently. So when a transmission lands, what tends to shift first, like our thoughts, emotions, body sensations, patterns, or even the decisions we start making?
Well, one of the things that I noticed first, good question, is that we start to really feel aware that we're highly delighted. We're in an amazing space. And again, I'll go back to the retreats because when people are there, they're in a heightened state of well being, they're enjoying themselves. And even if we're doing an activity such as, we go to Hawaii and we may be doing snorkeling with the manta rays and we get out in the water and we feel free and we feel more expanded and more alive than ever. Whatever it is, or we could just have that lunch with a friend and feel that more alive than ever. And the first shift that happens that lets us know that we're reconnected to the part of us that will facilitate the flow for us is that we feel alive again. You can call it expansive, you can call it wonderful. So these feelings aren't just some superficial gauge of where we currently stand emotionally. They're actually an understanding of being connected because the higher self is eternally in a state of bliss and peace. So that's the first thing that happens is that we begin to feel the emotions of our higher self, which is that highly positive state. And once that happens, then many things will happen depending on the situation. And we're not just doing this to solve problems, quote unquote, picture floating quotation marks here. We're here to also create the most amazing experience for ourselves and others, and also create a world that is different. As we can see very plainly, the old constructs that never supported humanity to begin with are crumbling under this massive wave of all of us being reconnected to that higher part of ourselves. Well, here's a little secret. All of these constructs have done the best they could to stop us from being connected to that part of ourselves because they knew how powerful it was. And this isn't an us versus them or a conspiracy theory type of conversation, but the false constructs would rather that we stay in a fearful state because that is the opposite of that beautiful state of delight and bliss that we naturally have access to when we're in that grace. From that, this is where we'll get a call from out of the blue, an email from out of the blue, an idea occurs to us, we act on it, and it's met with graceful synchronicity and blossoming outcome. And this is where that shifts and changes. When we're in that state, and what's more, when we're even in a higher version of it, there's nothing that can come in a disappointing way. Even if something occurs that isn't exactly what we thought it should be, we automatically know it to be part of the route to what we truly want.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, yes. practical proof, and I'm really obsessed with this because if it doesn't create a measurable shift in how we live, love, and lead, then I feel it's just spiritual entertainment, and I'm not here for that. And I really love that answer, Sir. Actually, like the simplicity of it. It, it is what makes it so profound, like pointing to enjoyment and delightment. Like you said, as a first shift feels incredibly honest. It's like a natural sign that someone has come back into alignment rather than trying to force change. I feel that it shows how deeply embodied your work is, where transformation begins with ease and presence and not effort or struggle. And that perspective is really refreshing and grounding. And from there, let's talk about co-creation. Like people hear quantum field and think they can manifest a new life with a vision board and good vibes. So, where do you draw the line between surrender and personal responsibility?
Right. So the first thing that I share with people is that I believe that we're holding hands, as in one by one with the divine creator source. So, whatever you want to call the source of light, whether it's God or the universe or whatever name you have for it, when we're in this heightened state, we are in a beautiful unity with that highly evolved and unstoppable creative being. And so, what I acknowledge is that I do the earthly parts while my heavenly um, companion, which we're all companioned with the source creator, when we're doing this in unity, I do the earthly parts and the source creator does the heavenly parts. So, my earthly parts may very well be write an email to someone when I feel nudged to, or sometimes it's don't send a communication when I'm feeling nudged not to. So sometimes it can be an action that feels aligned. So the part of our responsibility is feeling into the alignment and actually being open to receive the guidance. And we can get to a point where we can get such specific guidance. Like right now at this point, and the reason I love teaching this is because I want people to have what I have. I literally get distinct and very clear messages. Fly to Hawaii on the 30th of April. Go to Lisbon, Portugal. Like these kind of things. Or sometimes I'll even get a guide to go to a specific store. Well, I'll run into a friend. Whatever it is, everything can be that specific. So pretty soon we refine and are able to lean into feeling what is guidance and what is, coming from the mind. And when we get that part, then we get to continue a journey with our co-creative partner, which is the source. And that was what we can also call the quantum field, which is this massive energy field of everything at all times. And that's where the heavenly part does its bit because I may be guided to fly to Hawaii, but it's going to do its part to make sure that I meet the people that I'm supposed to meet. Or maybe I'm being guided to write an email or submit an application that I find online. And it's the heavenly partner's part to make sure that this comes through into what we would call manifestation. So the part where it gets delivered, that is the role of the co-creator, which is one with us. And the part where it has to do with the hands, the eyes, and all of the senses in the earthly realm, that's my role. Even when I create these retreats, I'm always very clear that I co-create them. The universe itself is creating them, just guiding me like a conductor of an orchestra and guiding me to my movements. I'm only making the movements. The source itself is actually putting all the pieces together. When we get that dialed in, the magic is unstoppable.
I really appreciate how you frame that, Seth. It's both poetic and grounding at the same time, I feel. Like the image of holding hands with the divine while staying, open to guidance captures such a balanced relationship between trust and participation. I feel that it doesn't sound passive at all. It feels like an active alignment where surrender is about attunement rather than avoidance, and that perspective really brings a lot of clarity to the conversation around co-creation. And with that in mind, what do you say to someone who keeps, waiting for a sign but avoids the uncomfortable action that real change requires?
It's okay. It'll happen when it'll happen. If we're uncomfortable with it, we can sit with that discomfort. I would invite them to not try to push against that discomfort, but just be with it and ask it what it wants to teach and what it wants to reveal. Because if they truly want to pass through this threshold and live in their magic, then they truly do want to make that happen. But that resistance is coming from something unresolved that needs to be resolved, something that needs to be heard or seen. And if we acknowledge it, release it, and dissolve it and resolve it, then we become eligible to pass through the threshold. So I would invite that person just to be kind to themselves, loving to themselves, and ask what the resistance wants to reveal to them. And once they get that, it's interesting, the resistance will go away.
Mm-hmm. That's a valid point, yes. And I really love how compassionate and grounded your response is actually. Instead of, pushing or shaming that resistance, you are inviting people to meet it with kindness and curiosity, which feels deeply aligned with real sustainable change, and acknowledging what the resistance wants rather than, fighting it shows how emotional intelligence and respect for the human experience. It really reflects growth as a relationship with ourselves, I feel, not a battle, and that perspective is incredibly healing and empowering self. So uh, I would like to thank you for this whole upgrade, for bringing the depth, the groundness, and the real world tools. And to everyone listening out there, if this episode sparks something in you, share it with a friend who's ready to move from spiritual theory to actual transformation. And subscribe, leave a review, and keep showing up for your own revolution. And this is Soul Sparks with Saima. Stay curious, stay grounded, stay lit, and see you in the next episode.